Imagine a room that smells like old money, mahogany, leather, and silence. Sitting across from me is a man who doesn't just understand the market, he moves it. He's a rabbi, but his portfolio makes Wall Street hedge fund managers look like they're running a lemonade stand. I asked him for his investment strategy. I wanted the tickers, the hidden crypto gems, the real estate secrets. He just smiled, leaned back, and said something that irritated me. He said, "You are trying to move the wall, but you only need to push the domino." That first domino is the first 12 seconds of your day. If you lose those 12 seconds, you have already lost the war for your wealth. Most people think financial freedom is a result of what you do between 9 and 5. They think it's about the hustle, the grind, the late night staring at blue light until your eyes burn. But they are playing the game backwards. The physics of success are actually very simple. Yet 99% of the population gets them wrong every single morning. I was one of them. I was drowning. My business was plateauing, my marriage was feeling more like a roommate arrangement, and my anxiety was the first thing that greeted me when the alarm went off. I would wake up, and before my feet even hit the floor, I was already behind. I was reacting to emails, reacting to the news, reacting to the sudden rush of cortisol flooding my system. I was a slave to the morning, thinking I was the master of my day. The rabbi told me that the Torah, the ancient blueprint of reality, describes time not as a flowing river, but as a seed. The morning isn't just the start of the day, it is the seed of the day. If the seed is rotten, the tree cannot bear fruit, no matter how much water and sunshine you throw at it later in the afternoon. He looked me dead in the eye and asked me a question that made my stomach turn. He asked, "Who do you serve the moment you open your eyes?" I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I didn't want to admit the answer. I served the algorithm. I served the notifications. I served the panic. He nodded as if he expected that answer. He told me that billionaires, the ones who sustain their wealth across generations, the ones who have peace alongside their prosperity, they understand a secret about human biology that science is only just catching up to. It's about the state of your brain waves. When you transition from sleep to wakefulness, you are passing through a very specific, very fragile neurological gateway. You are moving from delta waves, deep restoration, into theta waves. Theta is the state of creation. It is the state where reality is malleable. It's where your subconscious mind is wide open, suggestible, and powerful. It is the state of the child, the genius, and the mystic. For most people, this state lasts only a few minutes, sometimes just seconds. And what do we do with this precious golden window of creative potential? We pick up a black rectangle. We blast our retinas with artificial light. We scroll. We see a headline about a recession. We see a photo of someone doing better than us. We see an angry email from a client. And instantly, snap, the door slams shut. You are jolted out of theta and straight into high beta brainwaves. Stress, survival mode, fight or flight. By 7:05 a.m., you have chemically programmed your brain to look for danger, to look for scarcity, and to operate from a place of fear. You haven't even brushed your teeth yet, and you have already convinced your nervous system that the world is a hostile place where resources are limited. And you expect to go out into that world and create massive abundance? You expect to attract wealth when your internal frequency is tuned to survival? The rabbi laughed. He said it's like trying to download a terabyte of data on a dial-up connection. You don't have the bandwidth for brilliance because you spend it all on defense. He told me a story about a specific principle in Jewish wisdom called Reshit. It means the beginning. But it implies something deeper. It implies that the beginning contains the entire energy of the end. The head of the arrow determines the trajectory of the flight. If the release is off by a millimeter, the arrow misses the target by a mile. Your morning is the release. Your bank account is the target. If you are waking up in a state of reaction, your financial trajectory is off. You are working 10 times harder to correct a course that was doomed from the very first second. I remember sitting there, feeling defensive. I told him I didn't have time for meditation or hour-long rituals. I have a business to run. I have kids. I have chaos. He stopped me. He said, "You are confusing activity with productivity. You are confusing busyness with business. The habit I am talking about takes less than 60 seconds. It is not a burden. It is a lever." Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and I will move the world." This habit is the lever. He explained that wealth is not attracted to desperation. Wealth is attracted to authority. And I'm not talking about being a boss to your employees. I'm talking about being the boss of your own consciousness. When you wake up and immediately react to the world, you are telling the universe, "I am a servant to my circumstances." But when you wake up and impose your will, your gratitude, and your vision upon the morning before the world can touch you, you are declaring, "I am the sovereign of my reality." That shift in identity, from servant to sovereign, is the difference between making a living and building an empire. The rabbi leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. He said that for 3,000 years, his ancestors used a specific code to hack this theta state. A trigger phrase and a physical action that acts as a firewall for the mind. It blocks the chaos and locks in a frequency of abundance. He called it the Mode Ani principle, but he explained it in a way I had never heard before. He didn't frame it as religion, he framed it as psychological warfare. He said, imagine your brain is a supercomputer. When you sleep, it reboots. When you wake up, the operating system is loading. The first command you type into the command prompt will dictate how the system runs for the next 16 hours. If you type in stress, the system runs stress.exe in the background all day, eating up your RAM, slowing down your processing speed, making you miss opportunities. But if you type in the code he was about to give me, you load a different program. You load a program that scans for opportunity, that filters for connection, that magnetizes resources. He asked me to visualize my bank account. He asked me to visualize the number that keeps me up at night. Then he asked me, what is the feeling associated with that number? I said fear. I said lack. He said, exactly. You are projecting lack, so you are creating lack. The mirror of reality can only reflect what you stand in front of it. You cannot smile into a mirror and expect the reflection to frown. You cannot frown into the mirror and expect the reflection to smile. The morning is when you choose your face. This is where the domino comes in. He said, you don't need to fix your marriage directly. You don't need to fix your health directly. You don't need to fix your finances directly. Those are the middle dominoes. They are heavy. They are stuck. If you try to push them, you get exhausted. You only need to push the first one, the one that happens when your eyelids flutter open and consciousness returns to your body. I was skeptical. It sounded too magical, too easy. I told him, I deal in logic. I deal in spreadsheets. Show me the logic. He smiled the smile of a man who has seen empires rise and fall. He said, let's talk about the reticular activating system, the RAS. It is a bundle of nerves at the base of your brainstem. It is the gatekeeper of your attention. Your brain processes millions of bits of data every second, but you are only aware of a tiny fraction. Who decides what gets through? The RAS. And how does the RS know what to let through? It looks for evidence of what you already believe. If you wake up and check your phone and see bad news, you tell your RAS, the world is dangerous. So all day long, your RAS filters out the opportunities and highlights the threats. You walk past a potential business partner, but you don't see him because your brain is looking for a threat. You miss a stock trend because your brain is focused on the crash. But if you use this morning technique, you program the RAS to look for tov, for good, for expansion. Suddenly, you see the deal no one else sees. You hear the nuance in a negotiation that gives you the upper hand. You have energy at 4 p.m. when your competitors are crashing. This isn't magic, it is biology. It is the hardware of success. I decided to try it. I had nothing to lose but my anxiety. The next morning, the alarm went off at 6 a.m. The room was dark. My hand automatically twitched toward the nightstand, reaching for my phone. It was a reflex, like a smoker reaching for a cigarette. I stopped. I remembered the rabbi's face. I remembered the mahogany room. I pulled my hand back. I lay there in the dark, feeling the pull of the dopamine addiction, the urge to check, to know, to connect. It was physically uncomfortable. That's when I realized how deep the sickness went. I was addicted to the noise. I took a breath. I initiated the protocol. It involves 3 steps, 3 specific mental and physical actions that take place before your feet touch the floor. The rabbi said the floor is eretz, the earth, the ground of action. The bed is shamayim, the heaven, the place of thought. You must fix the thought before you touch the ground. If you bring a broken thought down to earth, you build a broken structure. Step 1 involves the body. It's about posture. He told me that physiology dictates psychology. You cannot feel powerful if you are curled in a fetal position. You cannot feel expansive if you are contracted. So, under the covers, I stretched. But not just a lazy stretch, a deliberate expansion, taking up space, signaling to my nervous system that I am safe, I am big, I am here. Then came step 2, the words. Now this is where people get tripped up. They think they need to recite a poem. The rabbi said, words are containers for energy. The Hebrew language, he argued, is like the source code of creation. But you don't need to be Jewish to use the code, just like you don't need to be a programmer to use Windows. You just need to know which button to click. The phrase he gave me translates to, I offer thanks before you, living and enduring King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Great is your faithfulness. It sounds religious, but break it down financially. I offer thanks. Gratitude is the vibration of having received. If you are grateful, you are signaling to your brain that you already have enough, abundance. Restored my soul. You are acknowledging that your energy has been rebooted. You are fresh. The failures of yesterday are deleted. The cache is cleared. Great is your faithfulness. This is the kicker. It's an affirmation of trust in the system of reality. It's knowing that the market, the world, the universe is not rigged against you. It is a partner. I said the words. I felt silly at first, talking to the ceiling in the dark. But then I felt a shift, a subtle lightness in my chest. I hadn't checked my email. I didn't know if my biggest client had fired me. I didn't know if the market was up or down. And for the first time in years, I didn't care. Not yet. In that moment, I was just being. I was charging my battery to 100% before unplugging. But step 3 is the one that changed my bank account. Step 1 is the body. Step 2 is the spirit. Step 3 is the intellect. The rabbi called it the first fruit. In ancient times, farmers would take the very first fruit that ripened on the tree, Not the leftovers, the first one, and dedicate it. They wouldn't eat it. They would invest it. They gave it away to the temple. This was a statement of supreme confidence. It said, I trust that more will grow so I can afford to give the first and best portion away. How do you apply this to a morning? You give the first fruits of your time. The first 5 minutes of your mental bandwidth cannot be for you, and they certainly cannot be for your boss. They must be dedicated to wisdom, not news, wisdom. The rabbi said, if you want to earn more, you must become more. You cannot solve $1 million problem with a $1,000 mind. So I grabbed a book, not a newspaper, a book of timeless principles. I read one paragraph, just one. I thought about it. I let it sink into that soft theta state brain. I visualized it integrating into my character. Then and only then did I put my feet on the floor. The results weren't immediate. The first day was just a good day. I felt calmer. I handled a crisis at work without yelling. I came home and actually listened to my wife instead of zoning out. But then the compound interest kicked in. You see, when you win the morning, you win the first battle. When you win the first battle, you have momentum. That momentum carries you into the 10 a.m. meeting. You are sharper. You are more present. People notice. Opportunities that were repelled by your stress aura start to be attracted to your confidence aura. 3 weeks later, the deal of a lifetime landed on my desk. It was a complicated merger, messy, high stakes. The old me would have panicked. The old me would have been too exhausted from the morning anxiety spin cycle to see the solution. But the new me, the me that had pushed the domino at 6 a.m., saw the pattern instantly. I closed the deal. That commission check alone was more than I had made in the previous 2 years combined. I went back to the rabbi. I showed him the check. He didn't look surprised. He just poured tea. He said, "You think the money came from the deal. The money came from the morning. The deal was just the delivery mechanism." He explained that money is a current, like electricity. It flows where there is least resistance. Anxiety is resistance. Fear is resistance. When you clear the resistance in the first 12 seconds of the day, you become a superconductor for wealth. But then he warned me. He said, now comes the danger. Because when it starts working, when the money starts rolling in, the ego gets loud. The ego says, I did this. I am smart. I don't need the ritual anymore. I can check my phone first, just this once. And that is how empires crumble, not from an explosion, but from a subtle drift. He told me that the domino must be pushed every single day. It is not a vaccine you take once. It is a shower you take daily. He leaned in closer, his eyes piercing through the comfortable silence of the room. But there is a deeper level, he whispered. What I gave you is the basic training. It gets you to stability. It gets you to wealth. But if you want to reach the level of true abundance, where you are not just making money but bending reality, you need to understand the secret of the hands. I had never heard him mention this before. He looked at his own hands, palms up, examining the lines. Most people use their hands to grasp, to take, to hold on tight. This creates a fist. You cannot receive anything with a closed fist. He looked up at me. The morning ritual changes your mind. The secret of the hands changes your destiny. It is a technique used by the richest kings of Israel, kept hidden for centuries because it is too powerful for the immature. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tick, tick. I leaned in, desperate to know. What is it? I asked. What do I do with my hands? The rabbi stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline that he practically owned. "It happens," he said, "at the exact moment you wash your face." Water is the connector between the physical and the spiritual worlds. When you combine the water with this specific intention, he turned back to face me, his silhouette framed by the light. You unlock the flow. He began to explain the procedure. It sounded simple, deceptively simple, but as he spoke, I realized this was the missing link. This was why I had hit a ceiling. I had fixed my mind, but I hadn't unlocked my capacity to receive. I was a bigger cup. But the faucet was still dripping. He was about to show me how to turn the handle all the way. "Listen carefully," he said, "because if you do this with the wrong intention, it can backfire. It amplifies what is in your heart. If you have greed, it amplifies greed and destroys you. If you have a desire to build, it amplifies the building. Are you ready?" My heart was pounding. I nodded. "Good," he said. "Tomorrow morning, after you say the words, after you stretch, you will go to the sink. You will turn on the water, but do not touch your face yet. First, you must do this. Hold your hands together, side by side, creating a bowl. Not interlaced fingers, no gaps, a perfect vessel." He demonstrated, pressing his pinky fingers together so tightly that not a drop of air could pass between them. Most men wash their hands by rubbing them together, friction against friction, conflict against conflict. That is how they live their lives, grinding, struggling. But you will create a vessel first. He lowered his voice, leaning in so close I could smell the faint scent of old paper and peppermint. Water represents kindness, flow, mercy. But uncontained water is a flood. It destroys. You must create the container with your hands to catch the blessing. The ritual is this: 3 times on the right hand, 3 times on the left hand. Then you rub them together, not to clean the dirt, but to mix the energies. And then, and this is the key, you bring that wet, energized vessel to your face. "To my face?" I asked, confused. "Your face is your identity," he snapped, his eyes flashing with that intense, youthful fire. "It is how the world sees you. It is the interface of your reality. When you bring the water to your face, you are not washing, you are rewriting. You are telling the universe, I am awake, I am clean, I am ready to receive. You must say, I accept the flow. Do not whisper it, say it with the authority of a general commanding an army." He sat back, the lesson finished. "Go, the sun sets soon. Do not attempt this tonight. This is for the dawn. The energy of the dawn is pure. The energy of the night is chaotic. Sleep on this. If your heart is not right, do not do it. If you are just greedy for a new car, do not do it. But if you want to change your lineage, then wash." I left his office in a daze. The elevator ride down seemed to take hours. The city outside was loud, chaotic, a grinding machine of commerce and noise. But I felt detached from it, like I was walking inside a bubble. The secret of the hands. It sounded like folklore. It sounded like something a grandmother would tell a child to get them to wash up before dinner. But coming from him, a man who moved markets with a phone call, it carried the weight of a commandment. That night was torture. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the shadows of passing cars slicing across the plaster. My financial reality was pressing down on me like a physical weight. I had payroll due in 3 days. I was $40,000 short. My biggest client was ghosting me. The ceiling the rabbi spoke of wasn't just a metaphor. It was a coffin lid, and I was scratching at the inside of it. If you have greed, it destroys you. Did I have greed? I wanted to pay my staff. I wanted to stop waking up with a knot in my stomach. I wanted to provide for my family. Was that greed, or was that survival? I looked at my hands in the dark. They looked weak, empty. For years, I had used them to type, to point, to drive, to stress grip the steering wheel. I had never used them to receive. I fell into a fitful sleep around 3 a.m. and woke up before the alarm. 5:45 a.m. The sky was a bruised purple, the sun just hinting at the horizon. The silence of the apartment was absolute. This was it. I walked to the bathroom. The tiles were cold against my bare feet. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. Dark circles, gray skin. Eyes filled with the frantic energy of a hunted animal. I was the old me, the man who hit the ceiling. I turned on the faucet. The sound of the water was deafening in the quiet morning. I let it run until it was cold, crisp. I remembered his instructions. Do not rush. This is not hygiene. This is alchemy. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I cupped my hands. I pressed the pinkies together. I focused on the seal. No gaps, no leaks, a perfect vessel. I placed my hands under the stream. The water filled the cup of my palms, heavy and cooled. It spilled over the edges, but I held the core of it. 3 times right. Splash, splash, splash. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I rubbed my palms together, mixing the water, feeling the friction, the wetness, the cold. I closed my eyes. I visualized the ceiling above my head, that invisible barrier that had stopped me for years, shattering like glass. I brought my wet hands to my face. The shock of the cold water was electric. It didn't just wake up my skin. It felt like it penetrated the bone. I pressed my palms into my eyes, my cheeks, my forehead. I didn't wipe the water away. I let it soak in. I accept the flow, I said. My voice cracked. It sounded weak. No, command the army. I took a breath, inhaling the scent of the water and the morning air. I stood taller. I imagined the rabbi standing behind me, watching. I imagined the kings of old he spoke about. I accept the flow, I said again, louder. The words resonated in the small bathroom. I am open. I am a vessel. I receive. For a moment, nothing happened. Just water dripping off my chin onto the ceramic sink. Drip, drip, drip. Then a sensation started at the base of my neck. It wasn't heat. It wasn't electricity. It was lightness. It felt as if a heavy coat I had been wearing for a decade had suddenly been lifted off my shoulders. The knot in my stomach, the one that had been there for months, uncoiled. I opened my eyes. The face in the mirror was wet, dripping, but the eyes were different. The frantic, hunted look was gone. In its place was a stillness, a terrifying, absolute stillness. I didn't look like a man who was 40,000 short on payroll. I looked like a man who owned the bank. I dried my face with a towel, not rubbing, just patting, treating my skin with a new respect. I walked out of the bathroom. The sun had broken the horizon. The apartment was flooded with gold light. I sat down at my desk. Usually, this was the time I started panicking, checking emails, looking for fires to put out. Today, I just sat. I waited. I felt like a radio antenna that had finally been tuned to the right frequency. At 9:15 a.m., the phone rang. It wasn't the client who was ghosting me. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered. My voice was deeper, calmer. "Is this Mr. Evans?" a woman's voice asked. "Speaking. Hi. I'm calling from the corporate office of the Venn Group. We've been tracking your work for the last 6 months. We were going to wait until next quarter to reach out, but our CEO saw your latest project proposal this morning. It somehow landed on his desk, though we aren't sure who sent it. And he wants to bring you in as a primary vendor, exclusively." The Venn Group. They were 10 times the size of the client I was chasing. A contract with them wouldn't just cover payroll, it would quadruple my yearly revenue in one signature. "I see," I said. I didn't gasp. I didn't stutter. I felt, expected. This was the flow. "When would he like to meet?" "Today, noon. Can you make it?" "I can make time," I said. I hung up the phone. I looked at my hands. They were the same hands that had been trembling yesterday. The same skin, the same lines. But they weren't fists anymore. They were open. The meeting was a blur, not because I was nervous, but because I was in a state of flow I had never experienced. I didn't pitch, I conversed. I didn't beg, I offered. When I walked out of that building 2 hours later, I had a signed letter of intent and a deposit check that made my knees weak. Not from fear, but from the sheer reality of the shift. I drove straight to the rabbi's office. I didn't call ahead. I had to tell him. I had to show him. The secretary wasn't there. The outer door was unlocked. I walked into the main room, the check burning a hole in my pocket. "Rabbi?" I called out. Silence. The office was exactly as it had been yesterday. The dusty books, the ticking clock, but the chair behind the massive desk was empty. I walked to the window where he had stood. The view of the city was breathtaking. On the desk, right where he usually sat, was a small, leather-bound book and a note. I picked up the note. It was handwritten in elegant, sharp script. To the young man who was ready to listen. If you are reading this, it means the water worked. It means you stopped fighting the current and learned to become the river. You probably have a check in your pocket, or a contract, or a new opportunity. You are feeling a high right now. Enjoy it. But remember the warning. The water amplifies what is in the heart. Today, you use the technique for survival. Tomorrow, you will be tempted to use it for dominance, and the day after, for vanity. The secret of the hands is not a magic trick for ATMs. It is a covenant. You have opened the faucet. You can never close it now. You must become a steward of what flows through you. If you hoard the water, it will stagnate and rot. If you let it flow out to others, it will remain fresh. I have gone to Jerusalem for a time. I may not return to this office. My work with you is done. The technique is yours now. The question is no longer, how do I get more? The question is, who am I becoming? Wash your hands. Keep your heart clean. The rest is just details. I lowered the note. I looked out at the city, the skyline glittering in the afternoon sun. I touched the leather book. It was old, the pages worn thin by centuries of fingers. I realized then that the rabbi hadn't just given me a wealth hack. He hadn't just taught me how to make payroll. He had initiated me into a lineage. He had handed me the keys to the kingdom and then vanished, leaving me to decide what kind of king I would be. I went to the small bathroom in the corner of his office. I turned on the tap. I watched the water flow, clear and relentless. I didn't need to do the ritual again right now. I knew it was inside me, but I washed my hands anyway, feeling the cool liquid, respecting the element. I walked out of the building and into the street. The noise of the city rushed at me, but I didn't flinch. I walked through the crowd, not as a man fighting for space, but as a man who owned the space he occupied. The ceiling was gone. The sky was the limit. And my hands, my open, capable hands, were finally ready to build. This is the secret. Not the water, not the words, but the breaking of the fist, the opening of the soul. Start tomorrow morning. The water is waiting. The flow is waiting. Are you brave enough to turn the tap?